Alright, good morning and welcome back to the channel everyone. We are continuing our little stroll down memory lane by looking at the Japan Chess Classic that happened here in Kobe, Japan in 2023, which was my first FIDE rated event and where I finally got a FIDE rating. And this was a 4-day event, so we've already covered off the first 4 rounds I played. I took a bye on day 1 in the first round, and then I played day 2, 2 games, and I've already covered day 3, the first game, and now this is time for day 3, the second game, which is round 5. So in round 5, I was white and I was facing Kinoshita. She is Japanese, but I believe that she's actually living overseas right now. And this is the first time I met her, but I actually kept in contact with her a little bit afterwards because she is also the editor, or at that point was the editor, for our local chess magazine, which she was still contributing to and helping to run from overseas. So it was really, really nice to meet her, and we had a really fun game. And I think she also ended up representing us in one of the Olympiads or something after that, if I remember correctly. I believe so. Anyway, so this was our game. Coming into this game, I had 1 point from my bye, and I was sitting on, I think, 2.5 out of 4. So I was feeling very good about my overall performance for the tournament. I've obviously had some losses and wins, and there was a draw in there as well. So very, very fun time, and I was really looking forward to getting my second game for the third day done, and then taking the train home and relaxing before the final day of the tournament. So in this game, as I said, I was white, and I started off with d4, which I was already playing at that point. She came in with d5, and I went for the king's gambit, c6 into a Slav, and then after putting our knights out, I'm still kind of hoping at this point maybe that she wants to put out her light square bishop, because this normally complicates the situation for black quite a lot after queen b3. But she just went super solid and played a semi-Slav structure. So here she's got her very, very solid triangle. And with that, I didn't have any specific, plan. Okay, against the semi-Slav, what do I do? Nowadays, I play Catalan quite a lot, actually. It's been one of the things I've tried out for 2024. And now at the start of 2025, it's still something I enjoy. And yeah, one of the reasons was that because against many of these structures, I just had no clear plan. And so back then, what I used to do is I used to play just bishop g5 because, it's a move. And it's actually the top engine move, the top theory move anyway. But for me, it's not something that was completely clear as to what exactly my plan was. I was just trying to develop everything and then kind of play the game depending on what happened. Which I guess is not the worst way to go. You should play the game depending on what happens, but it's always good to have at least a general plan for yourself instead of just developing and then hoping. Although I do admit I still do this a lot. So she develops her other knight, I close off, and actually in this situation, apologies, the opening book up to here calls this a semi-Slav, which to me it is, but as soon as I close off with e3, it swaps back to the queen's gambit declined. And this is something that I was a little bit unsure about, but I guess the point being that this kind of structure is a queen's gambit declined, and then black has now just inserted maybe afterwards the c6 move, which is also pretty solid. So, I mean, you can call it whichever way you want. To me, this was still a semi-Slav because that's kind of how we got here, but yeah, according to opening theory, at least the naming portion of it, this is now called just a normal queen's gambit declined. So I continued after they played a6. This is the first move that kind of takes us a little bit off theory. I continued with a5. I mentioned this in one of my recent streams, I think, as well. The general point that if someone goes to 1 step, you go 2. If someone goes 2 steps, then you go 1. Yeah, I still don't exactly remember the reason for this. Maybe you guys can remind me. But it is a point that I learned, and I was very happy to just play the move that I think it is. We've kind of sidelined slightly now, but we're back into still fairly kind of mainline situation after she plays bishop e4, pinning my knight, and I decide just queen c2 defending it, and then she puts additional pressure on my knight with queen a5. And now I kind of missed what my opponent was going to do. I'm not in immediate immense trouble, but it took me a while to figure out the coming sequence of moves. So I defended with my rook, which is a move. And then what do you think would be black's kind of most natural move here? As you might expect, it's knight e5, knight e4, getting that knight out of the way of my dark square bishop, and putting a third attacker on my knight. And at the same time, also hitting my bishop. So in this situation, I really want to move my light square bishop. I want to castle, get my king out of this pin, but I don't really want to lose my dark square bishop. So the situation is a little bit uncomfortable for me because I don't get to play the move I want to. I did consider just, playing up my light square bishop somewhere, and then she takes my dark square bishop, and I'm just, she has the bishop there, and we have to play. It is obviously also her light square bishop is currently just stuck behind all these pawns, so it wouldn't immediately be a massive problem, but I didn't want to give up the bishop, so I moved it back to h4 instead, and this is where we kind of get off from any master games. The name master games in this situation, which continued, was still just to put the bishop on this diagonal, which is slightly better, but at least I'm in general good company in that other people also didn't want to lose their dark square bishop. Anyway, so I move it off, and here she decides to push with b5. So black has not castled. They are using all their time and all their tempi to put additional pressure on me on this queen side with the pinned knight. And I can see here now they're starting to break through on my pawns as well. After they take here, for instance, I can't take the pawn back. If they take the other way, I also can't take back because my knight would stay pinned regardless of the queen taking the other queen if I, for instance, try to do that. So additional amount of pressure, and it's really, really uncomfortable. So I took a little bit of a break here and tried to figure out how do I diffuse the situation, how do I get into a position where I'm not just completely blown off the board, because black is coming at me incredibly aggressively, and it's not a position I know at all. So some of the options I was considering is I could, for instance, just push past, but I didn't consider this for very long, as I didn't like the idea of just making a semi-passive move. She would still be able to get the A pawn, and I don't really know if I'm doing especially well in that position or not. So I decided to try and be active and also to force black's hand in a way. I played bishop d3, and my point is basically that if you don't do anything, I'm just going to take your knight, and then even if I have to give up my light square bishop for it, at least you don't have this attacker. I can jump my knight out to d2 if I have to break the pin, and your queen and your bishop are no longer actually causing me much frustration. I can continue with the rest of my game, and I've kind of released myself from the situation. So if, for instance, she wins something like this, then I can go here. After she takes, then this pawn structure is not very good. This pawn in the front maybe not so great either in the long term, so I could probably just drop my knight back, and I could pick up a pawn again. I would have a better structure, and black's immense pressure that they've exerted on my pinned knight not only is broken, but really has no strong purpose in being there anymore. So this was kind of the point of why I would play my light square bishop up and potentially trade it, because I think the resulting position is pretty good for me. Black also, I think, kind of saw the general idea behind this and said, okay, well, hang on then, I'll just take with the knight immediately. Well, fair enough. Okay, so I take back with my pawn, and I put some pressure on their dark square bishop. And they decide, oh, okay, well, I'll go to put pressure on your light square bishop as well. And again, I have to figure out what to do. So in this position now, I've lost the pawn because I can't take back. And so I can either drop my bishop back, or I can take their dark square bishop. So if I take their dark square bishop, they're going to take back with the queen, and it's check. But what then what? So it's check, and I'm also still losing my light square bishop on the knot. So I really considered for a long time, but I should probably just play bishop e2 here and then still try to castle. But it just didn't feel like the right move. Black is able to play up additional pressure on this a pawn. I can't defend both. My queen is overworked. So I feel like in some ways things are just not going well. I have this backwards jump over here, but they can also bring up their light square bishop, probably onto the b7 square, and then I don't really have an immense way to continue, a clear kind of attacking plan, and black has not just won some pawns and won some space. So it took me a long time, but I actually figured out that I think this is the better move. And so after they take back with the queen, naturally with check, I then drop my knight back, breaking the pin. And thankfully, I looked a little bit further, and I saw that after that my light square bishop, I can take a pawn up at the top, and I'm hitting their rook. I'm also threatening mate, because if I sack my queen here and then take with the rook, this dark square bishop is actually crushing the king's one escape square. So if, I don't know, let's just give black a silly move, and here, this is mate, which would be a fantastic way to win this very, very scary, very, very scary game. So after I took here, the best move for black is actually just to sack their sorry, not to sack, to move their like square bishop, and then I have to move in and just kind of like keep my queen there, keep on threatening. This square is now double defended. The light square bishop is defended by the queen, so I have no immediate attacking plan, and so the engine line kind of continues like this. The reason why the queen doesn't take here is because I take here, and then I'm threatening both the knight and the rook. So first they have to get the light square bishop out of the way. I can attack the queen, they can attack me, and then everyone trades off, and we're all happy. And although the pawn that black took originally is still on the board for them, we both have an isolated one, and the additional pawn is probably going to be a little bit hard for them to defend long term. Although you will notice they have a light square bishop. But anyway, after I took the pawn at the back and threatened both of these things very nicely, black suddenly realized that they had kind of walked into a little bit of a dicey situation. I felt very, very good about the line I had calculated, because taking the dark square bishop and dropping my light square bishop did feel a little bit dangerous. Anyway, what they decided to do is actually not a very good move. They castled. And in this position now, I'm actually doing fairly well. What I should do is I should take the rook, and then I should just kind of slowly walk my queen out of there. And this whole position is pretty good for me. Da 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 da, and I'm doing well, right? So I'm up an exchange. I can still take care of that d3 pawn at some point if I need to, but I didn't do that. So after they castled, I was really scared about taking that rook and getting my queen stuck on their side of the board. And I was also really worried that at some point their queen would be able to get in here and take some of my pieces around my king, and then things would not be looking so good for me. So after thinking for a while, I actually decided to just kick their queen immediately. I'm now covering both of these diagonals. I'm also covering this bishop, this pawn, and as soon as they move their queen, then I felt like it's okay, and I can take the rook. What they should have done in this position is they should have again played bishop b7, because here they're hitting the queen, so it's queen v queen, right? We can all trade off, and they can maybe pick up my a pawn afterwards. So if, for instance, we do this and this pawn is attacked once, and they can try and get another attacker on it, or maybe trade off a rook first. I have to castle, and actually this d3 pawn in this line for me felt a little bit dangerous to try and take off the board eventually, because the light square bishop is already zigzagging its way out. It's going to get a little bit tricky for me. I was worried. Anyway, so black didn't do this. Black decided to play queen a5, keep the pin, keep the pressure on my pawn, and make the queen a little bit safer. And this gives me the rook, which I was hoping to get. So I'm still doing very well, although I haven't played the optimal line. It is looking pretty good for me. And here they hit my queen again. I have to run back, and then a really nice move for them. They cut my queen off from coming back to defend against something on my king side. They're double attacking my pinned knight, and I can only defend it really in one way, which would be to bring my rook around like this. But in that case, they can also just jump around here maybe, or they can start like bring their other, try and bring their other rook around and start hitting my queen again, and with that double pressure they'd be hitting my pawn as well. They could also just go straight for my rook like this, and then like back and forth, or take my pawn. And basically I was very unsure if this is good for me, because I feel like I'm basically giving that position, and I'm really worried that after they take this knight, even if they just take it once, this pawn over here is going to become a massive problem for me. So I took another very long think, and I'm happy to report that I played the best engine move. And for the entire tournament, I felt like this was by far my best move in the entire tournament, and it was the castle. So clearly I'm letting my knight hang, and it hangs with a fork on my rooks, but the counterplay I get is really strong. And so after black takes, I actually just lift the rook, and I'm threatening to take their bishop and then also take here. And if they take back, I actually mate them. So if, I don't know, if black falls asleep for some reason, they just make a random move. I don't know. In this situation, obviously they would be mate. Oh no, sorry, they wouldn't be mate, but now they've hung their rook. What a terrible example. The point being, I'm putting pressure on their back rank. Let's just say it like that. Unfortunately, that's actually not the best move, which is very, very frustrating. The best move is actually just to like keep the problem at the bottom and to just try and attack their rook as well. And so they take my rook, I take their rook, they take my bishop, I take their bishop with check, and then I can pick up the knight at the bottom. And in this case, actually, I'm just up a rook for a pawn. So this is really, really good. But I didn't know if this would happen. I I expected that if I do something like this, maybe they would just, like take this way, and then I take here, and then all of a sudden the queen can come in here, and like, I'm really scared about what the position looks like, right? So I was very, very uncomfortable with this whole situation with the d3 pawn, and my king being kind of open in the back, my queen not being able to come back properly. So I didn't even consider this for very long. I thought it was kind of like a one move attack. So I lifted my rook. Unfortunately, not the best move. But for black, actually, the best move isn't to play h7 like they did. It was just to play straight with g4, g5, and just to hit my bishop. Because with that, they can get their king out, and they can also still defend their rook if they need to. But anyway, they play h6, so this kind of diffuses my real threat at the back, and I still have a rook hanging here. So my worry again is that after, I don't know, so maybe if I take here, after they take, the queen is coming in and my king is kind of like really, really in trouble. I also have this, and after the pawn moves forward, their queen is defending it, and I can't get back to c1, so super uncomfortable with the whole position. Anyway, so what I decided to do was I was just going to play rook d1. So I got both of my rooks out of that knight pin, and one of them is helping me attack a slightly under defended light square bishop, and the other one is on the file where that pawn um, wants the queen, and it's also attacking the knight, which means that it's difficult for black to really get in while I'm still controlling these files to get in with their queen. So I thought this was a very, very safe move. In this position, then black played g4, I moved my bishop, and then they jumped their knight back. So they let me take this pawn, but they're going to take my dark square bishop. I'm also very, very worried about taking this pawn because you see it's actually a bit of a trick. If I take here, whoops. So this queen on a5 is still just making me so uncomfortable the whole game. So they've jumped their knight out of the way. I decide to put my bishop at the back here. I know that if they move, I can still trade it off by maybe coming back here or bringing it out if they don't trade. So I'm fairly happy to do this. Also, with them moving their pawn forward, I feel like it opens up more space around their king in the back. So I think that there's some chances for me here. Instead, though, they play knight c3, and now they're hitting my pawn, they're hitting my rook, so obviously I have to move that. But first, I found a nice in-between move, and I hit their queen with my dark square bishop. And so, actually, when I played the bishop up in the first place, I didn't see this. I wasn't actually noticing that I'm going to hit the queen because it's been sitting on that square for so long, and I've been focusing on its action kind of into my side. I completely forgot that I can actually hit it from the back until they moved their knight, and then I was like, oh, hang on, but can't I just get a tempo on their queen? So I get a tempo, they're attacking my pawn, obviously, we trade off, but I get to take the d3 pawn, which for me is a massive win in this position, and I'm still up in exchange, which is really nice. And on black side, obviously, they've got a light square bishop, which is still sitting behind these pawns, and they've got this isolated but passed a pawn, which is still fairly far back, so I felt like maybe it's not the end of the world and I'll still be able to stop it. So up brings light square bishop. I was like, cool, let's take off the rooks. I still think I have one rook left and I can take care of your pawn. And in this case here, so this move just caused me so much frustration. After I realized that my king can no longer come out, and it can't come out here, and it can't come out here. So I have to like move all my pawns to get my king out because this light square bishop is just finally in an absolutely perfect position. All right, so f3, they bring their king, then they bring their king. I have to bring my dark square bishop back. I don't want to put it on this side because I feel like they'll be able to push it with all the pawns. And I also think that because the main action is happening in front of this a pawn, it's better for me to keep it on the queen side. So they continue bringing the king. And as I said, I now have to make a completely different diagonal open because my king can't get on the light squares. All right, so they don't take. If they did take, obviously for me, oops, sorry. If they did take, obviously for me, this is quite nice because I get to control the middle of the board here, which is really good. So I would have been very comfortable with that. But they didn't take, so no worries. All right, so go up, go down, and I move my king in. So, okay, finally, at least I'm kind of towards the middle. I still can't go here, but I can, for instance, go around this way if I need to. I just have to be careful about what this knight can do. It currently has only one real escape square, um, and I'm thinking in the game, probably if it jumps that way, I might even take it because that still leaves me with the exchange, which should be winning in the long run. So after they jump back, I go, yes, okay, thank you very much. Take it off the board. Now I only have one minor piece versus one rook to, oh, sorry, one minor piece versus one rook to look at, which seems like a lot easier position to figure out. And I continue, I basically just want to get my king here somewhere in front of the pawn, and then I can find a way to lift my rook into their position. So their king comes out, my king comes in, and in this position, obviously, they can go down, but I can just push them around. I can also just walk around the back and then kind of do this. So their king isn't specifically getting into position just yet. And although I don't have to take here in the long run, it is maybe one of the other ways because we have this tension that I can open up a different file for my rook. So I feel like I'm in control of the position, and with them moving the king back, I get the feeling that black also realizes I'm in control here. Obviously, I did consider moving up, but then they pushed me, and I have to go back. And basically, I just gave them a free tempo with their pawn here. Then they go do this. Now I have to move back. Then they come in, and now all of a sudden their pawn has moved two more squares forward, and I actually can't bring um, my king in anymore. So very uncomfortable. I didn't like this at all. Anyway, so I drop back. I'm now thinking about how I can get my rook into the position now that my king is at least close enough to try and stop anything from happening on the a file. They bring in the king again. I check it out once, and then I take, and I get my open file. And now this is really where I feel I've taken control of the position completely. The light square bishop on their side can still cause me some problems with kind of access to a few things and defending a few things, but having my rook be able to penetrate to the position clearly puts me in the driving position, and I am definitely winning. Okay, so they go back, I attack it, I'm gonna go pick up some pawns, very happy to do so. And in this position, I'm just trading a few more off. I still have the exchange, which means that at the right moment, I can sack it if I need to. Just make sure these pawns are safe, get them off the light squares. And now you'll see that black has also made kind of a nice decision for themselves, although they didn't actually get to decide this one. They've kept their a pawn on a light square so they can keep on defending it. So if they put their bishop here, for instance, both of these pawns are completely safe until I can get my rook around to attack them. So I go up, I realize, oh no, they're attacking. I think, okay, hang on, but then maybe I can sack for it and I can still get back in time to get this. And then, wait, am I not losing? So if, for instance, I took here, take, then I can come back. But my worry was that they'll be able to come around and take this pawn, and then my king is on the off side and their king is on the on side with the 2-1 pawns, which means that they'll be able to take and probably figure out a way to just draw the position. And I'm so scared. I don't want to have um, a, a drawn game out of this obvious win that I'm trying to create. It turns out actually that is still totally winning, but at the time I felt very uncomfortable, so I didn't do anything like that. So I'm moving my king in. I'm thinking, okay, well, hang on. If you're going to move your pawn, maybe I can even just kind of try and checkmate you here. I can push this pawn through. I can still pick it up with my rook because the A file is not a light square promotion square. It's a dark one, which means that their bishop can't defend the A1 square. All right, so stop it there. And now I changed my mind. And so for the next, I'm just going to spoil it a little bit. For the next 20 moves, I have to go to the bathroom so badly, and we are the last game around. We are both in serious time trouble, but I'm struggling to figure out how to win because I keep seeing ghosts. I keep seeing ways that black can cause a draw or a repetition, or I can accidentally like take it the wrong moment and just like ruin my whole chance. So I'm just going to flow through this. They're defending both of these pawns. They've been able to move their light square bishop 2 squares forward now, and I did nothing in that time really. All right, so I put my rook behind. I'm trying to attack. I figure, okay, cool. If that pawn's not moving, because right now at least my rook is defending, right? So if you move it, you lose your light square bishop, and if you move your light square bishop, and if you move your light square bishop, I'm still covering the a3 square. So I'm thinking my king should be the one that's more active, and then I finally break through. So I get my passer, and I want to defend this with my king so that my rook can go do other things. All right. So here I think at some point they might have offered me a draw, and I was like, no way, I'm taking the draw. All right. So now they're coming around. They're trying to find a nice way to defend everything and also make their light square bishop be part of the defense on the king side maybe. So I push the king back. I come around to the back of their a pawn because I lifted my rook, so I'm losing touch with the a3 square, right? So here, and then I realized now I can't really do anything. If I go here, I still can't push. So I have to bring my king all the way back to push this light square bishop around because at least I've got their king cut off on the other side, right? So here I come, I'm coming back. Okay, cool. And in this position, actually, for the first time, I'm able to take the pawn, right? Unfortunately, they can take my a pawn because, my pass g pawn because I can't get back to it. So if I do this, then they go here, then I don't know, maybe I attack this, they defend it, and I can't get to that pawn, and black is slowly but surely getting down to a potential drawn endgame. So I'm really uncomfortable, and I figure, okay, now I gotta keep their king out, and instead of taking the pawn directly, I'm just going to get my king in the game. If I can, I'll take this a pawn with my king instead. All right, they attack my rook, I move it over. I'm trying to keep it here to cut off the other king, and currently my king is helping to keep this pawn safe. And I realize now in this position that black cannot defend both squares at the same time. I defend one, so I take here. And with this, at least finally, I have taken that d pawn, which has blocked my other passer for so long. So yes, that's basically the point, yes. And after I finally got to take this d pawn, our game had continued for about 3 hours. Um, Maybe just over 3 hours. We were the only game still playing in both playing halls. We had both ended up playing on increment for the last, like, I think black had been on increment for 20 moves or so. I had been on increment for about 10. And the adrenaline was intense. So around about here, when black was figuring out that maybe I'd found a way to win, man, their hands were shaking, my hands were shaking. We have to like move quickly because the increment is going on, but we actually can't place the pieces properly because we're both so high on adrenaline at this point. But after I got to take this deep one, finally, black threw in the towel. I'm able to cover this pawn. I'm also able to push the other one, and there's just no way for them to really defend. So I was super happy with this win. Not only did I win against someone who was quite strong, but I felt like I had converted a very, very tricky game, especially at the start where they came at this knight of mine with their knight e4. After that, I felt that the pressure was on me big time, and being able to find this point where I take the c6 pawn for me was really, really big. And then, as I said, my standout move for the whole tournament was castling in this position and letting them take my knight and fork my rooks. I was really, really happy that I found that because it's so easy to jump into the I'm not dropping a piece and getting my knights forked. What are you talking about? But I was really happy to find it, and yeah, to convert the point at the end was actually fantastic for me as well. So really, really nice. After this, 5 games had done, and I was sitting on 3.5 out of 5, which was way better than I expected to be doing into this tournament. Not being sure how strong I was compared to all these other players, and also the fact that many of the competitors were not only from Japan, but actually came from surrounding countries as well. I think Philippines and Thailand, maybe someone from China or Hong Kong and so on as well. All right, so thank you very much for joining. That was the end of round 5. As I said, 3.5. This was also the end of the third day, and so there was 1 day left. So on a high, I was able to go home on the train, chat with my other friend who was in the competition as well, and look forward to the last day with the last 2 games, and finally getting that FIDE rating. Cool. So thank you very much for joining, and see you again in the next one.